Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing another movie review, so hopefully you find this one interesting. This movie is a thriller from France, French language English subs, released in the year 2013, directed by Alain Guaradi, and this film is called Stranger by the Lake. So Stranger by the Lake is about a man named Franck. Franck is this handsome gentleman who goes to this beach that's populated by a lot of homosexual men. This is an area where these men can actually express themselves without feeling the pressure of stigma from the outside world. And so Franck goes there, he's introduced to a few people, and he strikes up a friendship with Henri. Now Henri is this middle-aged overweight man who's recently separated from his wife. He's very lonely, very depressed, and he's also a little bit weird, but Henri and Franck actually develop this friendship. And so they talk to each other. There's no real sexual desire between them, but it's just some very innocent sort of talking. But then all of a sudden that's going to be put on hold when Franck is distracted by Michel. Michel is this very mysterious man that Franck becomes obsessed with. But one night Franck actually sees something that suggests that Michel is a dangerous psychopath, but instead of running away, Franck is wanting to act out on his urges, his fantasies, even if it means putting his life in danger. So whether or not he actually costs him his life is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on Stranger by the Lake. I've actually heard about this film for quite some time. I didn't really pick it up anytime sooner because it was very hard to come by here in Australia, but I knew that this movie was a movie that's going to really push the envelope. It's really going to test an audience, and it's a movie that depicts a lot of sexual encounters between men that is going to cause an uproar. In today's world, where there's a lot of stigma with homosexuality, a lot of men or women who are homosexual actually have to conceal their true selves because they're worried about the judgment that's going to be passed down upon them. When movies like this come out, they're going to provoke a response, whether it's a negative or positive response. Any movie that actually creates a response is a movie that's worthwhile. It's a movie with a strong purpose, and I believe that although I didn't love Stranger by the Lake, I can still sense that strong purpose the movie has is because it's everything that makes European cinema as memorable as it is. European cinema with sexuality or violence isn't really pulling any apologies. With Hollywood, Australian cinema, British cinema, a lot of that is watered down to appeal to a wider audience, whereas European cinema is directed at a very acquired audience. And so when you've got Stranger by the Lake, when you've got Michael Haneke films, whether it's The Piano Teacher or other movies that really push the boundaries, these are directors who are not willing to make excuses for what they've done. They're not making apologies. They're sticking their middle finger up at society that's telling them what they can and cannot do. So these are directors who are not confined with limitations, and I think Alain Guaradi is a director to actually go up there with very brave filmmaking, is that this is a movie that does show you some very unstimulated sexual acts between men. There's ejaculation, there's full frontal nudity, and so basically the majority of this film is men walking around this beach naked. And so, as I said, it's going to cause a lot of insecurities in people, and those insecurities is what makes the film as memorable as it is because it's playing on those insecurities, and as I said, it's going to create a very negative or positive response. And so for me, being very secure in myself, I didn't find it as shocking as a lot of other people might find it, but I was actually surprised by the lengths that the director actually went to. And I will say that there are problems with the extremity that do cloud the rest of the film to some degree, but I will say that there is a strong level of French noir to this movie. This is a thriller, and I thought that the overall thriller is very acquired to French taste. So it's either you're going to love it or you're going to hate it. If you are a fan of French noir, you will appreciate the way that this movie starts off very slowly, but there's a simmering tension. It's like the boiling pot. It's starting to whistle. It needs to come off the boiler, otherwise it's going to explode. And so this movie starts off in a very repetitive and very deliberate lifestyle where you've got Franck who goes to the beach, he talks to Henri, he goes home. Goes to the beach, talks to Henri, goes home. And then all of a sudden, each time he comes back to the beach, there's a little bit extra that happens, and you know that it's building to something very uneasy, and then in the last quarter of this movie it blows out into a straight out thriller. And so you do have that sense of anticipation, and you've got that pressure cooker that actually explodes at the end. And so it does reward patient viewers, and it actually pays a lot of respect to that viewer because it's not dictating how you should be feeling about a certain event. There's no soundtrack, there's no cheap trick to actually make this film scary, to make this film funny, or to make this film loving. It's what you actually get from it. It's what you actually interpret the film as being. And so that is what I think is the biggest plus to European cinema, is that it pays a lot of respect to the viewer. And so Stranger by the Lake does that to some degree. You've also got the themes that the movie depicts very well. You've got the theme of loneliness. You've got the theme of a homosexual man in today's world. As I said, there's a lot of stigma behind it, and so they actually have to conceal their true selves, and that is a very lonely existence. And I thought this movie had that lonely existence. This is a movie about lust, and these men are going to this beach, and although they're having these sexual encounters in the woods right next to the beach, I never felt like love was present. And so this main character especially, he wants to go home with Michel, but Michel doesn't want that. And so I felt as though lust was substituted instituting love, and all of these characters on this beach were very awkward in what they were doing, is because they were feeling as though they were trying to achieve that sort of goal of making love and having love in their lives, but they weren't getting that. And it's also that insecurity in people, in that especially the character of Henri, this overweight gentleman, he's a very nice person, but at the same time you're never quite sure why he broke up with his wife. Did he break up with his wife because they just weren't in love anymore, or was he putting on a facade in order to look like he was integrating with society? And as I said, that stigma behind homosexuality, was that playing a pivotal role in his marriage? And so when he says he's separated from his wife, I always thought that he's trying to come to terms with who he is that finally he's in an environment, all these other men are asking why he comes here. He never gets naked, he never actually tries to meet a hook up with anybody, he's just there to look at the lake. And people are saying, isn't that boring? But then I always thought that character was trying to come to terms with who he is, and slowly trying to integrate into, as I said, trying to mix in with people that he actually felt a connection with. So I thought his character was riveting. And so you got Franck, who I thought was a likeable sort of character, the main character, and you also have the idea of desire, and basically risk-taking in order to get that desire. And so are you willing to put yourself in danger in order to get what you want? And so that was quite riveting as well, but this is ultimately the problem I have with the film. And so the overall theme of desire and risk-taking was the same I had a problem with, and the same problem came from the extremity to the film, is that with the extremity, the sexual acts, I thought they were so graphic and so in your face that it was exaggerated to the point, basically exaggerating that provocative point, and that it was trying too hard to be provocative. Now, I love extreme films, for example, whether it's about child soldiers in Africa and what they have to deal with, and whether it shows graphic depictions of dismemberment or mutilation, you say to yourself, why do you need to show that violence? But it's showing you what these children actually have to go through. It's trying to open your eyes to the realities of the world. Whereas in this movie, I didn't think the sexual depictions played a strong role. I didn't think they really played a purpose, is because, okay, we knew that there was a lot of lust in the film. We knew that these men were trying to hook up with each other, but there's prolonged sexual acts in this movie that are very, very graphic. And I thought, okay, well, they kind of felt out of place. And so on one hand, you've got this French thriller, but on the other hand, you've got these sexual acts that I thought were there just for pornography. And so I thought, all right, well, you're trying to push the envelope a little bit too much. And that some of the film is very subtle, especially, as I said, that thriller aspect, but there is other parts that aren't quite as subtle. And so you've got a beautiful sort of cinematography with the lake, but you do have, you got your very static sort of environments with the way that the movie was shot, but then you've also got elements, as I said, that aren't so subtle, that aren't very, make your interpretation. It's just very much in your face, and I thought as though it was a cheap sort of way in order just to put your hand up and try to make as much noise as possible so people actually see you. And so I thought that was a little bit out of place. I also thought the idea of risk-taking was a little bit exaggerated. Franck actually puts himself into the firing line, and after a while I thought to myself, well, I don't really care what happens to you because you're asking for it. And so I didn't really like that aspect too. I thought that aspect could have been played a little bit more subtle too, and that would actually made the film a lot more believable. And I also didn't like the ending. I thought the ending was very, very abrupt, and so it's going to leave a very unsatisfied taste in the mouth for a lot of viewers. For me, I can appreciate the fact that it's different. French cinema is known for this, in actually cutting a film very abruptly and not making any apologies for it, but I would have liked a little bit more closure than it actually does give the viewer. So overall, it's a movie that is going to test limits. It's a movie that is extreme, so be very careful coming into it, but if you like French noir, you're going to get something out of this, and as a result of that, I'm going to give Stranger by the Lake 3 stars. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later.